When Splatoon was first revealed for the Wii U, it was a marvel to me. I had never really been into the shooter genre, and yet from the very first trailer, I was enamored with this one. I wanted to learn more about the way it would work and how it would twist the genre in a little bit of a different direction. Now, the main focus wasn't necessarily on killing your enemies, although it could help, but the main objective of the main mode is just to cover more of the ground in your paint. That said, the series has now had 3 entries, and perhaps that turf war mode gets a bit old after a while. It's the only regular battle mode that we have right now, and if you're not into the ranked scene, then you might feel a little worn out. So, here's my pitch for a way that you can change up the turf war mode in Splatoon. This is called the low ink draft. Before I go further, let me just say that the world is a big place. It's possible that I'm not the only person who came up with this idea, but I did want to share it anyway. Now, the one thing you'll need to know about this mode that I made up is that it does require having all the weapons unlocked, or at least as many as you can. You'll get more mileage out of it if you have all the weapon kits. So in Splatoon 1 or Splatoon 2, you may need to grind up to a certain level and collect some in-game cash to purchase the weapons, or in Splatoon 3, you may have to spend time with individual weapons to rack up Sheldon licenses. The other thing I should note about this mode early on is that it actually works much better in Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, because in Splatoon 3 there is a slight difference that I'll get into later that makes it a bit more cumbersome. So how does it work? First, play any turf war with any weapon you want. But at the end of the match, be ready to pay attention to the results screen. What you're looking for is the weapon used by the player who inked the smallest amount of turf. This is harder to do in Splatoon 3 because you have to choose continue, stop, or change weapons before the game shows you that results screen. So while it's not impossible to do in Splatoon 3, you could just hit stop every time and change weapons as needed. It is a bit more cumbersome there. Now, once you've made note of the weapon used by that player, that's your weapon for the next turf war match. So go ahead and switch over to it. Now, it doesn't matter if you win the next turf war match or not. Your only self-imposed objective for this mode is to ink a higher amount of turf than the player who came before you. So, at the end of the match, you look at the results screen, and there's little Timmy with the slosher, and unfortunately, little Timmy only inked 400 points of turf. Well, now you get in another turf war match, and you show the world that you can ink more than 400 points of turf with that same slosher. Go ahead, do it. Like with many things, there's a bit of luck involved, depending on like your strengths with the weapon, or how well the worst player, quote-unquote, did in that match. But that's part of the fun. I'm the kind of player who likes a variety, so I find it to be a good way to mix up what kind of weapon I'm using. Now let's jump into some gameplay so that I can show you a bit of my first-hand experience. So you start off and you just enter a turf war lobby with whatever weapon you want, whatever gear you want. Here I'm just using the splatter shot for sake of example, and I'm going to cut around this match, but I'll let you know what changes by the end of it. So with this being the first match and all, it doesn't really matter how well you ink turf or how well you perform otherwise. Everything about this made-up mode comes down to what happens after the end of this first match. But if I do anything cool, then I'll leave it in. Alright, so my team happened to lose that match. But that's not what's important about this mode. Now, we go on to check the results screen. Of course, since I chose to record this in Splatoon 3, that means there's an extra step involved. You'll see right here it goes to my medals. And it doesn't show the results of all the players. But that's what I want to see. So I'm actually going to hit stop to look at the results screen here. And the person on my team who inked the least was Sean with the Splattershot Pro at 803. Or if I want to go with the least overall, that was the Splatana user on the enemy team with 520. So let's do that for sake of example. I saw that they were using the Charcoal Decavitator. There we go. And now we enter a new turf war, and the goal, regardless of whether my team wins the ordeal or not, is just to end the match with more than 520p. And this will be interesting for me because I haven't really used the decapitators all that much. But that's what I like about this little made-up mode of mine. It's encouraging me to switch up my playstyle. And now I'm forcing myself into using the decapitator, so maybe I'll like it more. If you are curious about your score at any given time, your P, your points for inking turf, is right up there next to your special meter in the top right. So I'm already up to 101. I'd say that's a pretty solid start, with the goal being to beat 520. I can get some help from an inkjet. That'll turf a bit more. Maybe I'll even kill some fools along the way. Got one. And yeah, with this weapon, I think for inking, we're not going to want the charge shot so much. As cool as it is to get the one-shot kill sometimes. And that was a good sprinkler spot by the enemy team. It was very annoying. Yeah, once they get all close and close that gap, then I'm a little helpless. I'm at 493 now, though. It's pretty easy to check when you're dead, because then you're waiting anyway. And just like that, I've already beaten 520. So now I can play out the rest of the match just normally, without paying any extra special attention to anything. And we'll have to see who inked the least at the end of this match to determine the next round. Man, my team did really not hold that together, and I guess that goes for me to an extent, but I think I contributed a fair amount in that match. There we go. Behold the enemy winners. But I won my game. My game was beat 520 with a Splatana, and I did. I got 942. Not only that, but I did a fair amount of killing, which was not part of the plan, but a nice little bonus. Full disclosure, from this point on, there was some sort of error in my audio commentary, so I'm re-recording this bit, but that means you'll be losing out on game audio. So with those results, the next one I'm going to choose is the N Parry Splat Dualies, and the goal is to beat 319. I think that'll be pretty easy, all things considered, but that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you end up with a really easy win condition, and other times the win condition is much harder, especially depending on your experience with the weapon in question. This is why I mostly recommend doing this low ink draft format for Turf War, as opposed to any of the ranked battle modes. In those modes, the objective is not as clear-cut, like cover the ground. You know, it's constantly shifting, and you have to focus your attention on one area most of the time in those modes. And I also don't recommend doing this with kill count, although there's nothing stopping you if you want to. It's just that that might be a bit more of a dangerous mindset to get into, is, you know, let's focus on just killing the enemies, when, in fact, the objective in any mode, whether it's Turf War or Ranked, is more than just killing the enemies. Sure, that'll always help, but if you're in tower control, you might need to ride the tower. If you're in Rainmaker, you might need to carry the Rainmaker. If you're in zones, you might have to cover the zone. So, just be mindful if you set a different sort of condition for yourself that you're being reasonable with yourself. Cut ahead a bit, and I notice at this point in the match that I have already surpassed 319 points with the N Parry Dualies. That means I can just go about the rest of this match without worrying about my set condition. My team managed to win that one, so let's just do one final swap. This time the lowest score was 326 points with the Z and F Splat Charger. It looks like that person was using the scope variant, but I actually don't use the scope variants at all. So admittedly, I'm going to be cheating a little bit here by using the non-scope variant. We may have lost the final match, but I once again met my own win condition. Wow, 666. That is an ominous note to go out on. And there you have it. That is the low ink draft for any round of Splatoon that you might enjoy. I'm hoping that they add more beyond Turf War to regular battles in the future, or find some other way to switch it up a little bit now that we've had an entire trilogy. But in the meantime, at least we can keep making up our own modes. Thanks for watching, and consider liking and subscribing. Have a good one. Bye.